For millions of tourists visiting Australia, the boomerang and the didgeridoo are iconic and highly sought after symbols of our Indigenous culture, which makes what I'm about to tell you as embarrassing as it is outrageous. Most didgeridoos and boomerangs are now made in Indonesia, Bali specifically, not here in Australia. And no, it's not because there's a large expatriate Aboriginal community living up there. It's all about money. Indonesian workers can churn out cheap copies of our artefacts by the shipload. And that's very attractive for the businesses involved, which are happy to exploit or disrespect 40,000 years of culture in the pursuit of cashing in on gullible tourists. In the stringy bark forests of East Arnhem Land, Jalu Gurawiwi and his family are practicing a cultural tradition tens of thousands of years old. They're cutting termite-hollowed trees to make didgeridoos. This is the land where the sacred instrument comes from. And Indigenous elder Jalu is its custodian and spiritual keeper. Who taught you to do all this? Your father? Jalu?
Passed it down from my grandfather, and to that, me, and I'm just passing to my...
You have to send it to your kids?
Yeah.
Jalu's son, Larry, will one day too take custody of this cultural icon. I know it's early stages, but can you play that now?
Yep. Okay.
Okay. That is the sound of Australia.
Yep.
This is the ancestral birthplace of the didgeridoo, or as the locals here call it, the yidaki. For thousands of years, the art of cutting, carving and painting these ancient instruments has been the preserve of the Yolngu clans here in the top end. Imagine their surprise then to learn that there's another land where the yidaki is being produced by the truckload. About 2,000 kilometres across the water, the land of fake watches and cheap t-shirts is churning out didgeridoos, lots of them, handmade by the Balinese, but sold as dinky-dye Australiana. Up here, in the rice fields and mountains of Bali, is the unlikely epicentre of a booming production line of fake Aboriginal artefacts, which ultimately ends up back in Australian tourist stores.
And we put sticker made from Australia, made in Australia. Maybe your customer don't know, made in Bali.
In order to expose this secretive and unscrupulous trade, we had to go undercover. In Bali, we visited 6 different factories suspected of supplying Australian businesses. Inside each, our investigation unearthed copied and mass-produced Australian Aboriginal art.
All dot, yeah, the start from Australia. Here just copy, yeah.
Dodgy didgers by the thousands. And dud boomerangs made by the Balinese for Australian businesses.
So you have many Australian clients already?
Many. And we also send to Sydney. Sydney, many containers to Sydney.
This Bali business owner proudly boasted to us that he and his 100 workers are experts in Aboriginal art after being taught by an Australian businessman.
Can I explain you?
Sure.
Yeah. This is kangaroo tracks. This is Aboriginal flag. Yeah. Because I know everything. I know everything with Australian products.
At another workshop, workers prepared an order of 400 didgeridoos.
Ada berapa biji? Kira-kira. Around 400.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But there's nothing traditional about the craftsmanship here. The counterfeits are churned out on the cheap. And instead of termite-hollowed trees, the instrument is gouged by machine.
giving him a headache because the orders now are getting slightly bigger.
But it's hard to blame the Balinese for trying to make a fast buck when the orders are coming from Australia. And around our nation, in the most popular tourist spots, overseas visitors are being cheated.
It says Australia on here.
All the rubbish says Australia on it, you know?
Gabrielle Sullivan from the Indigenous Art Code says there are now more fake Aboriginal souvenirs being sold here than the real thing. And as she discovered during a secret shopping spree, it's difficult to tell, even as an Australian, what's genuine and what's not.
I would say that up to 80% of the products I looked at were either fake or I couldn't tell the difference. You know, it was hard to differentiate.
A question mark on 8 out of every 10.
Yes, I was appalled. Like, to actually go into these shops and hand over cash for these objects made me feel sick.
The fake stuff is now so prevalent that Indigenous artists can no longer compete.
As soon as you see a good one, you sing out.
Yes.
And I'll stop.
Yes.
Here in the top end, artists like Bundak Marika and Molly Molly Wirapanda spend hours hunting for supplies. Today we're searching for the native hibiscus tree.
Up here?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's looking for this for ornamental didgeridoos.
She'll be making ornamental didgeridoos, lizards, crocodiles, anything small.
It's a taxing task. First, finding the right tree.
This is hard yakka. Did you find something, Molly Molly?
Yep.
That's a big branch. Do you want a hand with that?
Yep.
Oh, what? Gee, that's amazing.
Then cutting the branches by hand.
Gee, you're pretty good with that blade. Wow. I wouldn't like to be your husband.
Yeah.
But this is only the beginning. Hours of work still lie ahead in preparing the pieces for sale.
We're not sitting in some warehouse, you know, turning out hundreds of or thousands of boomerangs or thousands of weavings. It takes hours. You have to go bush to look at, find the right natural resources.
You're saying there's a lot of thought that goes into
Thought and care. Thought and care.
Art is one of the largest sources of independent income for people up here. But they're being priced out of the market by cheap copies.
Can I show you one of these, but made up in Bali?
Yeah.
In Indonesia?
Yep.
So let's compare them. Here's one that we got from the factory in Bali. Look at that, almost the same size. But very bright.
Very bright.
And it says here on the label, have a look at that, Banduk.
Hand painted. Hand painted. People are being deceived, literally.
Not only is this bamboo copy offensive, it also undercuts the real thing by almost $40.
It's just made to sell and abusing Aboriginal culture.
It seems outrageous, embarrassing even, that tourists visiting Australia are being tricked into taking home a piece of Indonesia. But herein lies the problem. Selling fakes isn't illegal under Australian consumer law, unless the labelling is deemed misleading and deceptive. As a result, businesses have become sneakier, and Gabrielle Sullivan wants them stopped.
A lot of what's going on in this space, it's legal, but it's not fair.
Who is the real culprit here? Is it the company making the stuff in Bali? Is it the shop owner selling it, or the tourist looking for a bargain?
I think it's the business owner. I think it's that point of the wholesaler, the person that's responsible for the manufacture for this, the person that's probably making the real money out of this.
You're talking about Australians.
Yeah, I'm talking about Australians. It's wrong.
Coming up, The tricks of a multi-million-dollar industry exposed.
On top of that was a Made in Indonesia sticker.
So you'd take off the Made in Indonesia sticker?
Yep. They would sell it as authentic Aboriginal artwork.
In the heart of the Surfers Paradise tourist strip.
Big business, there's big money in it. So,
Money that could be going to real Aboriginal artists.
Yep.
Aboriginal artist Michael McGuan is taking me on a tour of some of the most popular souvenir stores.
That's a whole rack of fake product.
Yeah, these are just cheap rip-offs designed to try and trick people.
Michael can pick a dodgy ditch from a mile away.
Hand-painted, design in Australia. Well, of course they were designed in Australia.
Yeah, the boomerang.
About 60,000 years ago.
It was about 10 years ago when, struggling to find a job, he started working with Brisbane-based wholesaler Biribi Art.
This one here and this one here are the exact same design that I used to do at Biribi Art.
He claims the owner, Ben Wooster, paid him to add the final touches of paint to Aboriginal artefacts made in Indonesia.
I had suspicions when I started doing bamboo didgeridoos. Obviously, they're not a traditional thing. And he's told me that the background and that was done by other people and all I had to do was fill in an animal.
When did it dawn on you that, hang on a second, these things are fake?
When we painted them, up the top they had the wax bit and on top of that was a Made in Indonesia sticker. Part of our job with painting them was to also remove that sticker. So
you'd take off the Made in Indonesia sticker?
Yep, you'd have to take that off.
Michael says that after adding his paint, Biribi Art would then market it as the real thing.
They would sell it as authentic Aboriginal artwork, so hand-painted by me.
No mention of Indonesia?
No.
So the sticker on the product at point of sale said that all the artwork had been done by you?
Yep.
Did you feel guilty about it?
I felt guilty for a long time, which is partly why it's taken me so long to say something.
Michael's claim that some Australian businesses remove Made in Indonesia stickers is a revelation that's backed by our own undercover investigations in Bali.
Maybe your customer don't know Made in Bali.
This Balinese business owner, who supplies a number of Australian wholesalers, says the Made in Indonesia stickers are all for show.
So it doesn't have to say Made in Indonesia on the back?
No, nobody. Nobody.
But these stickers, Made in Indonesia.
This is for custom. Sometime our customer need it, sometime no. This only the custom.
Implying that an imported souvenir is genuine when it's not is illegal. And the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission is now cracking down on these dodgy tactics.
But look, these are all the same. It's got to be coming out of the same factory.
Recently, it accused Ben Wooster's Biribi Art of misleading customers over the authenticity of 18,000 products it's sold in souvenir stores since 2014. Mr. Wooster, they're serious claims, which Mr. Wooster had no interest in explaining when we caught up with him in Brisbane. I'd like to have a chat to you about selling fake Aboriginal art products.
No, I'm not obliged to comment.
You're not obliged?
No, thank you.
But have you any shame?
Can you please leave the property?
The allegations, which are refuted by Biribi Art, will be heard in federal court later this year. Ben Wooster also issued a statement to 60 Minutes, insisting he doesn't source any products from Bali. Good morning, Jonathan. 60 Minutes.
How are you?
I'm Liam Bartlett. But there are still plenty of businesses operating within the grey area between what's illegal or perhaps just morally wrong.
Oh, no, I'd love to talk to you.
That'd be great. We also approached Jonathan Naiman, the owner of Romike, one of the biggest wholesalers in the industry, to ask why he thinks selling imported Aboriginal artefacts is ridgy-ditch. How can you import anything and call it Indigenous, Aboriginal artefacts?
Well, if the art is designed by an Indigenous artist, as long as it's clearly marked that the art has actually been manufactured overseas and all.
But how are the imported products marked? Tell me that.
Made in Indonesia.
All of them, are they?
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be the case in at least one of the shops where Mr. Neyman's Romike souvenirs are sold.
Well, they shouldn't put words on like that because it's misleading for customers. Yeah.
This Queensland retailer was unhappy with the labelling on a recent order of boomerangs from Romike and was in the process of sending them back.
So I sent him a text, saying, show him these photos. Australia handmade. He goes, what a mess, they sent some of the old stock to you.
And what is the company, Aussie?
Company, Romike is the name of the company.
Back in Sydney, Mr. Neyman eventually admitted, during a bizarre off-camera rant inside his warehouse, that he is in the process of replacing Romike's old stock and blamed any bodgy or misleading labelling on the company's previous owner, his own father. Now, this is one of the factories in Indonesia, in Bali.
Wow, wow.
In the Northern Territory, the idea that businessmen should be allowed to continue to profit from a trade in fake artefacts horrifies Indigenous artist Bundak Marika, almost as much as it does seeing an Indonesian making them.
Painting.
Painting them.
It's not even using brush.
Those didgeridoos will go to the customer under the auspice of being an Aboriginal artefact.
No, crook. It's crook. Crooked.
The way she sees it, it's cultural theft, and it needs to be banned immediately. The market is flooded with fake Aboriginal art. If that trend continues, what will happen to the real thing?
It's like anything, you know, things go out of phase, no matter where you're living, and you see things going and gone. If the fake art is then continues to do what they're doing, and it totally floods the market, you'll see the genuine art out of the picture.
That would be disastrous.
That's right. Art actually represents us. It's like a passport. It's our identification. Fake arts don't represent any of